I'll be honest, y'all, I didn't really mess with CK3 that much before, but with some cool mods, I'm sitting here like,
Oh my god. I get it.
Thanks to Lath, he recommended a mod list that makes the game more realistic and honestly a lot more fun to me. Diseases are more deadly, you don't know people you never met, your vassals and people are harder to please, and much more. It becomes a lot more difficult to properly manage your realm, so that's why I'm jumping in the deep end with Byzantium to really see what I'm in for. So here I am as Strategos Alexios of Bulgaria. I'm well established with decent skills and already married. Now, when I click on my wife Irene, you can already notice some new things. I don't really know exactly how good she is at stuff, but since I live with her, it doesn't take long to figure out she's kind of an airhead. This is what it looks like when I know someone well, while most other characters are gonna look like this since I never met them. Also, if you aren't aware, succession works differently in the Byzantine Empire. For the duchy titles, which are called themes, we get to nominate a candidate who has to be an adult male and use our influence to keep him ahead of other candidates. I know I really nailed the realism here because the first thing that happens is me getting sick. My wife clearly spent a lot of time with me while I was sick because right after I recovered, she says she's pregnant. Soon, my little heir Nicholas was born, and I'm thinking we're gonna have a nice family, but that's not how this is gonna work out. Poor Nicholas isn't eating much and constantly crying, and my wife and the midwife can do little to help him. But while I'm stressed out thinking about my son, I hear from Constantinople we have a new Basilius, who I hear is merely a child. Obviously, I'm not going to take orders from a kid, so I denounce this regime. Unfortunately, my son Nicholas could not beat his illness and passed on to a better world. The Palaiologos family was deprived of a future, but Irene is once again with child, so there is hope. This time, it went worse though. My next son didn't even get a chance to take his first breath. Poor Irene was traumatized from the ordeal, so we didn't even attempt to have another kid for a while. While I was managing the realm, the Bulgarian people were not happy with their Greek overlords, calling me a tyrant and complaining about taxes, and somehow my policy of ignoring them wasn't working. I had more important things to worry about, like my liege being a tyrant and overtaxing me, and finally, some other nobles were standing up against this unfair treatment. I joined to put this bastard in his place. Wars now have a more costly effect on my land, but hopefully the more fair treatment we will get will make this worth it. Soon after I raise my army and set up for a war, we get word from a group of peasants that they're fed up with my treatment of them, saying I'm unfair. Well, when they taste my blade, they're gonna wish for how things were before. I know my wife Irene must be stressed about this situation, so I sent her word that I will return to comfort her. Once I arrive, we spend a wonderful night together, and I feel much better about taking on the challenges ahead. As my army marches off, I soon get word that Irene is pregnant once again, and now I'm more motivated to fight. Maybe if I prove myself on the battlefield, the Lord will grant me a healthy child. This peasant rebellion more than doubles my army, unfortunately, and I don't think my current quality is gonna be enough to overcome it. So I hire some mercs and engage the peasant rebels at Ohrid. Despite being heavily outnumbered, our superior troops and tactics are showing their worth on the battlefield. And God soon rewards my effort with a healthy son who I shall name Michael. Encouraged by this news, I inspired my troops to fight harder and we run down the remaining rebels in Ohrid, wounding their leader Todorka and capturing her soon after. For the unforgivable high crime of treason against her lord, she will get what she deserves. Now, on to my rebellion against my lord, It's not looking good with my conspirators' armies being smashed by the Basilius, and since I was so far away, I couldn't help them in time. With them defeated and running away, the Basilius turned his attention on me, and well, I just hoped that I could sit in defensive terrain and cause a lot of damage to his army while my allies regrouped, and we would beat him next time. Unfortunately, that is a lot easier said than done, and we got whooped in Ohrid. I would have been better off just following the retreating armies. We eventually regrouped around Thessalonica and started sieging the city. As we were finishing the siege, the Basilius brought his armies here again, and this battle would be our last chance to beat the Basilius. Unfortunately, one cowardly lord had withdrawn nearly 1,000 men from the battle, and the general in charge basically blundered on the battlefield, sealing the fate of this army. We lost to an 18-year-old. Of course, I am in prison after the war is over, but despite his young age, my liege understands boys will be boys. This war wasn't that deep, so I pay him 100 gold for my release and walk home. Alexios II really went through the ringer because right after he beat a major vassal uprising, the Ayyubid Sultanate started an invasion to take the kingdom of Nicaea. But before he could even properly mobilize a fight against them, there was a tuberculosis outbreak across the empire, and sadly, that's what did him in. Andronikos is the next Basilius, and considering the mess he's inheriting, I think he deserves some support. For years, he fights the Arab invaders, keeping them away from the capital. He's doing a decent job considering that he's outnumbered, so I figured we'd give him the support he deserves. Our finest thoughts and prayers. Irene gets pregnant again, and I was honestly surprised I'm getting any action with her considering she is still suffering from the tuberculosis she caught during the last epidemic. Unfortunately, it ends up about how I expected. I may not be a doctor, but I don't think having TB was good for the baby. Gotta give some props to Alexios though. He did eventually pull it off and completely shut down the Ayyubid invasion. Also, I don't know how because I wasn't pushing for it, but my wife got control of the neighboring theme of Philippopolis, so now we're a very powerful couple. This power is very intimidating, and certain people can't stand I have it. On July 12th, 1199, a guest named Hovsep follows me to a darker part of my castle and makes a move. It's basically a coin flip on whether I'm gonna make it, but I got lucky this time. My guess is that Hovsip was a lone actor here. My spy master warns me that having dread could inspire more incidents like this. This old man hated me and had nothing to lose, so I guess with the dread my name caused, it pushed him over the edge to make an attempt. I try to have him arrested, but my incompetent guards somehow lose an 83-year-old man, and now he's gonna get away with my attempted murder. With my son Michael growing up, I need to consider how I'm gonna set him up for success. I want to make sure he'll have a good wife, but it's a bit difficult to find a good lady in these conditions. I just look for who would be a good ally and hope for the best here. Also, since he's my only child, we're gonna make it a grand wedding. So Michael will soon be married to the wonderful Giovanna Visconti, who is possessed, disloyal, but honest. You know what? I think I just got my son a bipolar wife. Hopefully the sex balances out the craziness he's in for. When Michael comes of age, I think I set him up pretty decently otherwise. He has good traits, and immediately I start spending my influence to make sure he inherits my and Irene's themes. I also waste no time in getting the grand wedding started. Because of the mod list I'm playing with, these grand marriages are so much more important for networking. Now I know what the people who rule around me look like and what caliber of individual they are. If you ever feel bad for yourself, be glad you're not this guy. Bro thought he was about to do something. I don't really have any big goals for Alexios right now. I'm just trying to make sure things are set up well for Michael when it's his time, and he can make the big moves to lead the dynasty to greatness. My wife is aligned with my goals and is doing wars to expand her duchy outside the empire. Like the good husband I am, I make sure to support her goals and slay her enemies. I managed to get Michael next in line for the theme of Thessalonica, and I wanted to speed up the time it would take him to get that title. Yeah, it wasn't going to be easy, but I wanted to give it a try. In my advanced age, however, simple tasks were getting a lot harder. Every day it felt like I was decaying, and soon my time would come. I couldn't manage things as well, my murder scheme was exposed, and I cancelled it quick before my name would appear. People were noticing my decline too, pretty quickly. They started calling me the Forgetful. My bishop said we should celebrate this, and I just replied, celebrate what? Irene declared yet another war, this time on the Cumans to take a duchy from them, and of course I was gonna do my part. But as my armies began sailing across the Black Sea, the old age caught up to Alexios, and he passed from this world. At long last, it was time to continue my journey as Michael. Alexios may not have seemed to do much, but the foundation was set for Michael to accomplish a lot. This is when I learned that Michael apparently remarried since his first wife that I set him up with died in childbirth. But anyways, the first thing I did with Michael was bring the troops back home. As nice it would be to help my mom win, it would have required me to spend a lot more money for honestly useless land. Now, just like my father before me, the peasants were not fond of my rule. My spy master says I should do something about it, but I'm just gonna follow my father's footsteps of just ignoring it until I'm forced to deal with it. When that day came, I dealt with it just like my father did. And halfway through the battle, I get word that my mother had also passed, so now I get all her titles. It's too much for me to deal with, so I gotta hand some of these out, but first, let's kill these peasants and give their leader some relief from the neck pain he had. With 2 themes under my control, I'd gotten myself a solid power base, generating a lot of money, soldiers, and influence. When the news of a 17-year-old Constantinos XI being named the Basilius hit my court, I knew it was time to start making my moves for that throne. First, I tried to put myself first in line for the throne, but if we're being for real here, I'm gonna need a better plan than waiting for a 17-year-old to die as a 30-year-old. I'm gonna need to take that throne by the sword, and to do that, I'm gonna need to be doing some networking. So, I have my son Zacharias marry the daughter of the Duke of Dalmatia and plan a grand wedding in Voronezh. I wanted to form an alliance with the neighboring Duke of Raska as well, who I had reason to believe possessed a great amount of troops that could help me. As the wedding preparations began, it was like God himself stepped in to clear a path to the throne for me. Constantinos got excommunicated by our ecumenical patriarch, and since I had decent relations with him, he was very willing to say that I had a rightful claim to the throne. I wanted to act fast before my Basilius had any ability to repair his reputation, so I established a faction to make me the new Basilius over that godless Constantinos. Initially, there didn't seem to be many who cared about my claim, but good thing there was a major social event coming up that a lot of lords were gonna come to. Okay, of all the people I expected to see at this wedding, he definitely wasn't one of them. Somebody must have been trolling me with the invites, cause I know they were laughing when he saw the Sultan pull up to my estate. Anyways, the next few weeks were spent partying with the people and massaging noble egos so people would believe that I would be the right fit for the Basilius. It was clearly working as the wedding went on. One by one, more nobles pledged support for my claim for the throne. By the end of the wedding, we had a dozen nobles ready to fight for me, and by our estimates, that was more than enough strength to overthrow the emperor. Unfortunately, Constantinos wasn't going to give up this throne without a fight. So I waited a while around Varanhe for everyone's armies to show up, and then we began our march to Constantinople. The Basilius didn't stand a chance, especially since he didn't have the smarts to combine all his men, so when my supporters engaged him on the fields of Celorimbra, it was not a pretty sight. Battle was over before the reinforcements could even arrive, so those guys died even harder. Soon, we were free to begin our siege of the capital without any worry of being interrupted. The war was very straightforward from that point. I continued sieging the provinces around the capital while the Basilius regrouped in Anatolia. He never got the strength to fight me again, and I really didn't need to fight him, so I just waited him out. On November 15th, I could finally enforce my demands and take the throne of Constantinos along with all his other titles. I did have an option to decide the fate of Constantinos, and since I got what I wanted from him, I showed mercy by sending him on his way. He was irrelevant now, and there were better things for me to do. Since I was overloaded with more titles than I can manage, I would give all the land I had in Bulgaria to Georgios, who is fortunately part of the Palaiologos dynasty, to focus on the land around Constantinople. Next, we gotta get a legend going about how amazing I am for accomplishing this. To top it all off, Michael organizes a triumph to celebrate his victory in the capital, and this gives him a massive boost to his legitimacy as a ruler. This isn't the end of Michael's ambitions as a ruler. He's not content to just sit and enjoy the parties as emperor. Expansion is on the agenda, or perhaps restoring the empire is a better phrase. The Sultan of Rome has been allowed to settle in Anatolia for far too long, and it needs to be addressed. If we seize all of our de jure lands, we could get almost everything back in one war. But it does cost a massive amount of prestige to do such a war. I sent spies over later on, and we get an encouraging report on Rome's military strength. This war is totally doable. I just need the prestige, and a great way to get that prestige would be by organizing a grand tournament. We will have a fantastic showing that will not only make me look better, but also hype up my son and heir to the empire. Things aren't smooth sailing though. Due to the ineptitude of my spy master, a heist is successfully carried out, with the thieves breaking into my castle and making off with a lot of valuables. Although it would make a lot of people mad, I have to keep up my fearsome reputation, so Belisarios is just gonna have to go. This isn't the only problem the tournament faces. When a crowd gathered on a viewing stand to watch the melee contest, it collapsed, leading to dozens of casualties. Just like with my spy master, I couldn't let this sloppiness stand. I think you can guess what happened to them next. Now, as for the tournament, I wasn't just watching. I was an active participant. I entered the duel tournament along with my son. I knew that I'd struggle against my much younger opponent, so I bet on my son winning. The first match was the qualifier, and that duel went very well for me. I easily beat my opponent Taz and continued to the semifinals, where I would have to face my son Zacharias. I could have conceded to make his victory easier, but there's no sport in that. I was gonna fight him. When our round began, we fought hard against each other, trying to get any edge we could, but in the middle of it, when we locked swords, I managed to rip it from his hands into the air, but unfortunately, it landed amongst the crowd, impaling a member of the audience. We took a break to check on him, and he was not happy, but the show must go on. As the fighting continued, it became clear that I could not keep up with my son, and eventually he wore me down and defeated me in the duel. Even though I lost, I was still happy because my son had bested me in a completely fair fight. He was worthy to go on to the finals. Once there, he made me even more proud by defeating his opponent and winning the duel contest. Not only had Zacharias brought a lot of glory to the Palaiologos name, he'd also brought a lot of money to my coffers. The grand tournament was a great success. I gained a lot of renown, prestige, and impressed all my vassals that attended. Now I could move on to the next item of my list, the invasion of the Sultanate of Rum. They lacked the forces to properly fight me on the battlefield, so my armies moved province by province, sieging all the strongholds. As I was out campaigning, I got news that my wife got sick. Apparently, she was the first among many poor individuals who had caught the Abadosian pox, which was spreading all across the empire. But fortunately, it wasn't going inland. I had some really good timing with this war. By leading my armies in central Anatolia, I was dodging all the provinces plagued by smallpox. But since this plague was apocalyptic, it was killing so many people that families couldn't even set their succession straight. Because of that, I was inheriting so many titles. I wanted to sort through the titles after the war, but I was having so many dropped on me that I had to address it. It was so annoying because I would start giving titles away and then a bunch more would get dumped on me. It basically ground my game to a halt because having all these titles paralyzes your realm. 5 very boring minutes later and we're back on the warpath to Rum's capital of Azizia. The Sultan brings his armies around, but of course he is still unwilling to fight me. If I'm gonna beat him on the battlefield, I'm gonna have to chase him down. However, there is another elephant I need to address. Not just me being overloaded with titles, but allegedly there is a big faction organizing against me. I say allegedly because despite this pop-up, I have no clue of anyone organizing against me. It's just whispers in the wind for all I know. But still, I have to be careful because a declaration could come at any moment. I finally engage one of Rum's armies and the declaration finally comes. But not from the faction. Instead, it's the Ayyubids invading me to take the kingdom of Anatolia. Michael just ain't having a good time right now. What was just supposed to be a simple reconquest turns into him having to deal with a massive plague, some sort of conspiracy against him, and now an Arab invasion. We're just gonna have to take things one step at a time. At least the Rum War is almost over. We continue chasing down his small armies in Anatolia until finally the Sultan taps out and I restore Byzantine rule over much of Anatolia. However, that means a lot more land I have to defend from the Arabs, who are coming in a much larger force than I expected. It's just a lot of bad news coming, but there is some good news too. We finally figure out what the factions against me are. The peasant one is whatever. The big concern is Sebastianos of Moesia trying to take the Byzantine throne from me. Sadly, there isn't much I could do against him directly. I need to act against his supporters, but I don't know who those are. It takes another few weeks until finally one Duke, Tesamir the Frog, is revealed as one of the supporters. I need this dealt with ASAP while I'm fighting this war, so I gave him the fastest persuasive argument I could make to pull him away from that faction. Since he had such a large army, this tipped the scales firmly in my favor and that faction would never follow through with the war. The peasants did though, but I was very unworried about them. I figured the cretin mercenaries I hired could beat them. A call that I was completely right about. Now all efforts can be focused on the Arab armies, who while greatly outnumbering me had ventured too deep without proper supply, and I was waiting for the right moment to jump on them. In July, we moved in on the Arab forces around Comana. This sieging army crumbled under our initial attack, and while they tried to reinforce it, those troops came in so piecemeal that we could easily handle all of the Arab reinforcements. The Battle of Comana was a decisive victory for Michael, with the post-battle report reporting a 20-to-1 casualty ratio. The next move was obvious, push forward to liberate our land, but that is when things started going downhill. Little did I know, the coastal towns were being plagued by a tuberculosis outbreak, and poor Michael caught it quickly. My doctor gave him a treatment that appeared to work, but it was a fluke. Michael's body couldn't fight the disease for very long, and soon he succumbed to the tuberculosis. At 52 years old, Michael had accomplished a lot in his lifetime, certainly leaving Zacharias a large pair of shoes to fill, but at least the worst of the realm's issues were dealt with, and the Arab invasion wasn't as scary as it first seemed. Since Zacharias was accompanying his father on the campaign, I sent him home to prevent him from getting consumption too. My armies had pushed into the Levant to fight the Ayyubids on their own turf, and while the battle initially looked good for my side, the Arabs showed that they weren't out of this fight yet with the amount of reinforcements they sent in, and they were really owning me on the battlefield. It wasn't great news, but I would get even worse news to overshadow it. One of my vassals, Antonius of obfusCKate, is attempting to murder me in public with a dagger. I know he hates me, but it's a next level of hatred that he wants me dead, consequences be damned. Only a 24% chance of success, so I think I'll be okay, but the rolls just aren't on my side today. Zach didn't even make it a single year. Bro might have been safer on the battlefield than in Constantinople. I can't believe it. Now I'm playing Gregorios, who as an 11-year-old was not eligible for any of the titles Zach had except being head of the Palaiologos dynasty. So yeah, I just lost everything in less than a year. There wasn't even anything I could do about that either. God just said, "You're not that guy, pal," and kicked me to the streets. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit. It's not all bad. Our family is still very powerful in the realm. Good thing I managed to keep some important titles in the family, so recovery is definitely possible. For some reason though, I still controlled the Byzantine armies, which is very annoying because I'm getting stuck with the bill for them. After some thought, I think this is a good stopping point for me now. I really am loving this mod list though. I feel way more engaged with the world, like I'm actually playing a medieval lord, and I'd be totally down to continue this campaign or try another start if you all want to see it. Just make sure to leave a like below so I know the enthusiasm. If we hit 8,000 likes, I will for sure continue this playthrough, hopefully restoring my dynasty to the throne and the Byzantine Empire as a whole. And if I keep getting good support, I'll do more realistic CK3 playthroughs. Shout out to my alumni supporting me on Patreon. If you want to go the extra mile and help me out so I can spend the time I need for quality content like this, consider helping me out there. I got more good stuff coming out this month, so I hope you'll enjoy it. Hope to see y'all for those videos. Bye bye!